Hi everyone, Elisa with Jots Designs. In this video, I'm going to be making a resin and polymer clay trinket dish. I'm going to be using some basic techniques, so it's good for beginners for resin and polymer clay. I'll be using a glass dish that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. It's already got some feet on it, so it's going to be easy to finish. With any project, with resin especially, you want to make sure that your surface is level. So I've got these little bubble levels here. And then for the resin, I'm going to be using some Clearcast 7050 resin. It's a 2-to-1 ratio resin, and I picked that up from the Epoxy Resin store. With this resin, it can be measured by either weight or volume, so I've decided to do by weight for this project. Definitely check with your specific resin to see how to measure it and mix it. I've got some cups for the colors. I've got some stir sticks. And then for my colors, I'm going to be using some Just Resin Fuchsia, and it's a metallic paste. It's got some purple and some kind of raspberry color. It's really pretty. And then I'll also be using some Lorez Angel White paste and Pink Velvet Metallic powder. And then from Dryer Days Art Studio, I've got some Silver Metallic pigment powder and also Silver Mica flakes as well. And I'm going to be using some this white, it's a metallic powder as well, but I don't have the brand, I'm sorry. I got that from a friend, but you can actually pick up some white powder from Dryer Days Art Studio, Laura's Art Corner for the Lorez products, or even the Epoxy Resin store has some Pearl-X powders you can pick up as well. I've got links down below for all three of those, as well as discounts. So definitely check that out, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give the video a thumbs up. So when you're mixing up resin, again, look at your resin and make sure you're following the directions. With this 2-to-1 ratio resin, I'm doing 1 part hardener and 2 part resin. And then also start with the hardener. That's definitely recommended by all manufacturers, and then add your resin on top of it. So with the 2-to-1 ratio resin, say you're wanting to do about 3 ounces, you're going to do 1 ounce of hardener and 2 ounces of resin, and then you're going to give that a good mix. Again, look at your resin's directions. Most of them are 3 to 5 minutes, and all of them will definitely recommend that you scrape the sides of your container as well as the bottom, and also the stick. So once you've mixed that nice and thoroughly, you'll not see any wispies, is what I call them. And especially if you scrape the side and pull that out, that's when you'll see them. If you don't see them anymore, give it another 15-20 seconds stir, and you should be good to go. Now with the metallic pastes, a lot of times they'll harden up. Just kind of depends on your climate and how old they are. And they're pretty simple to kind of melt down and get them ready to use again. Most of the time I use my hair dryer just because it's a lower heat, but I just happen to grab my heat gun. So I'll leave the heat on for just about 5 to 10 seconds and then pull it away so it doesn't get too hot. But you can kind of watch it melt. And usually you just need that top layer, basically enough for your project. You don't need to melt the whole entire thing. I have had some where there's kind of an oil residue, and then I will actually warm up the entire container and mix it up thoroughly and then use that. Now with powders, I do like adding the powder to the resin, so that way I know how much I'll need. And you just want to make sure you gently fold that in before you start stirring it up, so you don't have any powder or puffs coming out and you're not breathing that in. And then a good rule of thumb is always no more than 10% colorant to resin. With things made specifically for resin, like these pastes, you can kind of fudge that number a little bit and use a little bit more. Same with the powders, because the powders don't typically have a reaction. But if you're using anything water-based, like acrylic paint or liquid dyes or anything like that, you definitely want to stick to that 10% rule, because you can have the resin could react and cure quickly, and you'll not be happy about that. So to start off with, I'm just using the white to kind of outline where I want to put my colors. Just a simple thing. It's not going to really change the overall piece or anything like that. And then I'm just adding the colors where I want them, starting on the outside. Since this dish does kind of go down towards the bottom. There's basically a downward side, and then the bottom is flat. And so I'm just adding all of those in and then pushing that up to the side of the dish. This dish has a little bit of a lip, so I am pushing the resin up to make sure that it's kind of covering the side, and then it'll naturally kind of sink down because resin is self-leveling, but it's going to stay where I put it originally, even if it's a thin coat. So I'm just adding that in, and then making sure that I have all of the resin used up, because I didn't really make much extra except a little bit in this white and silver. And then I'm just adding in the white along the color edges here. And I couldn't get a lot on there, so I didn't have a clean drizzle for most of this time. But that really doesn't matter, because I'm grabbing my heat gun and just kind of blowing those up a little bit and mixing them so it's not just straight lines. And you can see these cells that form, they're really awesome, but unfortunately they don't stay as much as I would like, just because of the shape of the dish where it goes and everything kind of goes towards the middle. But that's okay, it still turns out really awesome. If you do happen to get any resin on the glass, you do want to make sure you clean that up pretty quick. I just wiped it down, and then I grabbed some alcohol on a Q-tip to make sure that it was cleaned off, and I didn't have any excess resin on the glass itself, because that would be a pain in the butt to come off once it's cured. And then I'm going to add in the silver along where the white was, basically mix that in just a little bit as well. And then take a toothpick and just kind of go around where I feel it's needed to be kind of mixed in a little bit. And then I'm going to actually pop the bubbles just to make sure those are gone. And I'm going to let this cure. I'm only going to actually let it cure for an hour. So I'm going to be setting a timer so that way I remember, because a lot of times I'll forget. But I'm only letting it cure for about an hour. And you can see how the resin is definitely setting up. It's not dripping off the stick or anything. It's sticky and, stringy. So I know it's still good. It's not fully cured or anything. But the reason I'm doing that is so that way I can put the mica down and it'll stick in place, and I won't have to glue it down or anything. Or when I'm putting the clear coat on, I don't have to worry about it floating. But that way it's pretty set up. And then I also don't have to worry about it sinking in this first layer as well. If I get some resin on the tweezers as I'm going, I just wipe that off with some alcohol as I go. And I'm just grabbing little bits of the mica to put down exactly where I want it. They're very thin pieces, but even those thin pieces have layers on them. So just watch out where you're putting them because they can kind of separate, and don't breathe on it or anything, because they'll blow everywhere and you might have some pieces sticking where you don't want them to stick. So I'm just going to finish putting those down here. You can see just how the mica sparkles in the light, and same with the powder and the paste as well. They're really pretty. So I'm going to be using some Sculpey brands here. I've got Sculpey 3 translucent. Definitely want to stick with the Primo, but I didn't realize that when I bought this big chunk. I'm going to be mixing it with the opal, and then I've also got blush and fuchsia, and those three are Primo, and I'm also using pearl Primo as well. And I'm going to be mixing the pearl with the blush and the fuchsia just to give them a little bit of sparkle because they are not metallic. And then again, I'm mixing the translucent in with the opal. And that's just really to kind of get the flakes that are in the opal to spread out just a little bit and not be as dramatic as they are. It's just something I have a preference for. So I'm using about 1/8 of a standard pack for each of them. And I've just cut up a little bit of the pearl, got the mica or the fuchsia ready to go, get a little bit of the blush, and I'm going to start mixing up the opal and the translucent here. With the polymer clay, you want to get it conditioned, and it's all a matter of mixing it together and warming it up with your hands and getting it more pliable, basically. So you can see it's kind of hard to fold this a little bit, and you can use a roller if you need. This is an acrylic roller. Definitely don't use anything that is, you know, from your kitchen, because you don't want to use it with food again. Unless you're ready to get rid of it, then by all means use it. So basically I'm just folding it over, rolling it out until it's a bit softer, and then that way I can mix it with my hands. A couple things, of course, that you'll want to use is either a craft blade. I've got a tissue blade there, and that's just to cut the clay. And other than that, you really don't need much. I do have a pasta machine. That's the red thing off to the right there. You don't need that. Obviously, this is why I'm showing you. You can mix it by hand very easily. And then especially if you're not kneading it in a sheet and you're just having it rolled out in balls like this, you really don't need the pasta machine or anything. So I'm just cutting everything in half and taking half of each color basically and putting those together for the larger one. I'm going to make 3 little cones here, just kind of showing that the pinks come off on my hand, and it colored the translucent and the opal just a little bit, which didn't make a huge difference in the end. The opal itself kind of yellows when it bakes, so the pinks didn't really make too much of a difference. But I'm just stacking those and then mushing them together, keeping them fairly separate at first, but making sure that they are nice and stuck together. And then I'm just rolling it into a ball. And then I'm taking the pinky side palms of my hand and kind of rubbing those together to start making it into a cone. And then I'll finish using the table, keeping my pinky more towards the table than my thumb. And then that helps keep the cone shape. And with these, I wanted to twist it just a little bit, give a little bit of movement to each cone. So I'm just gradually twisting and then making sure I'm not elongating it. So I'll smush it a little bit and make sure it's nice and even. You definitely want to make sure that it's the right size before you bake them. So I just grabbed some rings to make sure that they were going to hit where I wanted them to hit. You don't want to make them too long. I didn't measure anything. I just kind of made sure that the clay itself wasn't too wobbly or anything and was about the length that I wanted. And then I just flattened out the bottom to make sure that this one stuck up straight. And then I'm going to take the other bits of clay and cut those in half and make the other 2, stacking them just a little bit differently, but otherwise making them the same way into the cone shape. With the 2 smaller ones, I am cutting them at an angle so that way not all 3 are sticking straight up, and they will kind of, the 2 smaller ones will go off to the side. And then when I bake them, I've just got some cardstock paper here that I've folded accordion style. And this is really great for beads, just to make sure that they keep the round shape and don't go flat on you or anything by baking on a flat surface. The recommended on the package is 275 degrees Fahrenheit for, I think it was 15 minutes, but pretty much I bake everything for an hour just to make sure it's good, solid. And then I do want to sand these down because I didn't smooth them very well on a couple of them. I just want to make sure they are nice and smooth though. And I've got these little square sponges, come in really, really handy. They're wet dry, but I absolutely love them with clay. And for these, I'm just going to be using the 2 lower grits. I don't need to go all the way up since I will be covering them with resin, but they do come in this nice set. So they're really handy to have for polymer clay and even polishing up resin as well. So I'm just sanding them down, using the water to clean off the pad, making sure I get the tips nice and rounded. and just basically everything smooth, especially the bottoms, so that way they're good and flat and pretty simple. I started with the lower grit there, and then I'm going to move up to 400, and no rhyme or reason of doing all the 320 first and then the 400. It's just how I did it. But then I let those dry. And again, this resin is fully cured because I'm going to be using some glue to stick them down. But first, I want to show you these little pyramids that I made with the leftover silver and white that I had. And I've got this little mat that I use when I'm coating things in resin and I just need it to drip off, but it also makes great little pyramids. So I just decided to use those as well. So I'm placing the cones where I think they should go, just making sure that they are going to be able to fit and in the right place. And then I'm using some super glue gel here by Loctite, just to make sure that they are stuck down, so that way when I put the coat of resin on, they're not going to be moving or anything or toppling over, especially these two smaller ones. And you just want to put a little bit on. You don't need much. Put a little bit on and then hold it for about 20 seconds or so. That way you know that it's going to be tacked down nicely. So I'm just going to make sure those are in place, and then I'm going to add in the little pyramids, see where I want to place those, and make sure that I did want them before gluing them down, and I definitely did want to include them. So I'm just going to glue those down as well. And I've got the clear coat mixed up, and I'm covering everything with the resin, the little pyramids and the cones, and really it's just to make sure everything has a nice shiny coat on it. Since resin is self-leveling, gravity of course will not let the resin remain in thick batches or anything on the cones or the pyramids, but it will remain with a nice shiny coat on there. And I think it is really pretty. I love how it turned out. The mica flakes are gorgeous. Adding the pearl into the blush and the fuchsia just gave that extra little bit of sparkle. Let me know what you guys think of this piece in the comments, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Don't forget, I have the links in the info, as well as some discount codes in the description. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give the video a thumbs up. And again, I'm Elisa with Jots Designs. I'll see you next time. Bye.